How many of you like movies? So those who aren't raising your hand, you're probably thinking to yourself, no, Pastor, I don't like movies. I don't even know what a TV is. Well, humor us just for a few moments, okay? So you're part of the conversation. Everyone who, 14 people that raised their hand, those of you who like movies, I'm sure we all like different kinds of movies, right? But we understand the plot of a movie, how it is supposed to go. And the particular type of movie I want us to think about is when there is someone at the beginning who has kind of the power. Not the main character. We understand that's not the main character. But they have power. They look intimidating, strong. People follow them not because they're good people, but because they're afraid of them. And after all, they look like they're winning, and who doesn't want to be on the winning side, right? The movie that I was thinking about was Back to the Future. Who's seen Back to the Future? I know it's old cinema. I get that. But if you have seen the movie, then that alternate timeline where they go back, there is a character on top, right? Anybody know his name? Biff. Biff is on top, right? People fear Biff. Biff has followers. Not because he's a good guy, but because he's a bully. People are afraid of him. He looks like he's winning. Well, we know how cinema works, right? And if he's not the main character, that means he's not going to be the one that stands at the end. And we all know the scene, the manure truck scene. Come on. Where he slides in, his car slides in, manure falls all on top of him. He's got manure in his car, all over him, in his mouth. No one knows that? You did, thank you. Well, what happens after that? The crowd looks at Biff a different way, don't they? He doesn't seem like he's got all the power anymore. He seems fragile. The power seems to have shifted from Biff to somebody else, and the allegiance follows, doesn't it? And I think that's the way that we kind of operate. When we'll follow the so-called kings if they look powerful, but if they don't look powerful anymore, we switch to a different king. Something that's going to make us feel secure, something that looks strong and in control. And I want you to hold that thought. As we continue our sermon series of No King But the True King, the king we're talking about today, he doesn't play the part. He doesn't fit the mold. He doesn't look like he's got all the power. In fact, he looks the exact opposite. There isn't a crowd following him anymore. They had already jumped ship from him to someone else that looks like they have the power. He doesn't sit on He doesn't come in on a war horse. He comes in on a donkey. He is chained and bound. He doesn't wear fancy robes. He has been stripped, beaten, and flogged. He doesn't sit on a throne. Instead, he's lifted up on a cross. And standing there, beaten and bound, he's facing a Roman governor who seems to have all the power, military power, political power, the kind of power people follow because they're afraid. The crowd knows how this works. They've seen this movie before. And so have we. And there's Pilate, who looks over at Jesus, beaten and tired and worn out. And he's got this question in his mind, question that he's heard the buzz in the air. Are you really the king? Are you the king of the Jews? Because this does not look like winning. This does not look like power. This does not look like someone people would follow. Are you really a king? And it really forces us to also look inside of our heart to see and answer that kind of a question. What king are we following? A king that we want, a king that seems like they got the power, they got the control, or are we following the king that we actually need? A king whose power doesn't come by force, but by faithfulness. A king who doesn't seize control, but sacrifice. A king that doesn't reign because of fear, but because of truth. And there is that king standing before Pilate. There is that king standing before us today. And we need to look into our own hearts and ask, which king are we going to follow? Let's say a prayer. Jesus, you are a king like no other. Teach us to follow your way of humility, love, and truth, rather than chasing the empty power that this world promises. Amen. Our story takes us to Good Friday. And there's the trial. You can picture it. I tried to paint it for you already, but there's Jesus standing before Pilate, and he's on trial. It's not really a fair trial, but these are the words that we have from John chapter 18. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked. "Or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born, I came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." Contrast the two kings. Pilate seems to have all the power, right? What we would picture power. He's got soldiers at his command that are going to do whatever he says. He's got Caesar who's backing him as long as he doesn't go against Caesar. And if you cross Pilate, he'll kill you. And then standing in front of him is Jesus, beaten, tired, no army, no weapons, no followers anymore. Yeah, the stories of him being able to do some amazing miracles, they were out there, but he definitely doesn't look like he can do that anymore. Doesn't look like that man. And so then Pilate comes to him with a question, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Don't misunderstand the question. It's not Pilate trying to gather information. This is a power move. This is a threat assessment. If you're a king, then you're a problem to me. But, look at you. You don't look like a king. Where are your people? You're beaten and bound, and I got all the power. And so Jesus changes it and answers, "My kingdom is not of this world." In other words, he says, "Yes, you're right, Pilate. I am a king. But I'm no threat to you because I have no interest in sitting on your earthly throne that's going to come and go. That is not what I'm looking for." He's not a king who seizes power, not a king who builds an empire by force or fear or violence, not a king that will protect his throne at all costs. And maybe, because of that, is he also not a king that we want? It's a question that I've been wrestling with, and I hope that you wrestle with too, as we think about the two different sides. Who is it that you're really going to follow? Are you going to follow a king who looks powerful, plays the part? Or the king who is humble and true? Because they lead to completely different paths. I think of it as a gut check question for us. Who gets my trust when everything seems to fall apart? Who gets my obedience when I may have to even sacrifice something to follow him? Who gets my hope for the future? And whoever it is, whatever it is that gets the answer to all of those is the king that we are tempted to serve. And let me tell you, it's not an earthly king sitting on a throne. There are so many different kings that are trying to get your attention, trying to get your allegiance, trying to get you to follow them. Think about this morning. What was the first thing that you reached for today? Before your feet hit the floor, before you even said a word, before you said a prayer, was it your phone? Now, I need to put a little disclaimer in there. This thing saved me by waking me up this morning an hour earlier, so thank you. But doesn't this and the little screen that is on there, doesn't it kind of dictate sometimes our mood? How much does it control us? When you look at it and you're scrolling through, does it cause your mood to either be anxious, depending on what's on there? Angry, depending on what you read? Maybe even proud, all before breakfast even begins? How often do we not just check our phones, but we submit to them? Now again, I want to say they're not all bad. You woke me up this morning. Grateful for that. But you can find devotionals, you can download Bible apps, you can watch our services online like what many people are doing right now, or you can go back and watch them later. There's some really good things that come from here, but there is also other things too, isn't there? Social media, news feeds, endless scrolling of videos that really are kind of nonsense. Bzz, oh, another like, another comment. Oh, let me see. Bzz, oh, another news feed, another headline. Oh, I got to take this. I got to read it. Bzz, oh, another video that was shared with me. I need to watch this one and 30 others that follow. Those kings are loud. Those kings are demanding. Those kings are urgent. Rarely does Jesus shout. He waits. There's a reason why he says his kingdom is not of this world, because his kingdom doesn't depend on notifications or updates. His kingdom depends on the truth. It depends on grace, on mercy, on forgiveness, on love. That's his kingdom. And I know it's not just our devices that try to draw our attention. There's a lot of other kings that are out there. Maybe it's our career, our finances, our health, our control. All can be blessings when put into the right place, blessings that God has given to us, but they can also become very dangerous kings. So my question for you isn't, do you believe in Jesus? I know you do. There's a reason why you are here today and you gave up an hour of your time to come here. You believe in Jesus. My question is this instead: which king gets your first attention? Because that is the king who has your allegiance. I go back to the story I read to you. Most of you have probably heard that story before. You got the two kings, and they're completely opposite, aren't they? They got one that seems like he's got all the power, and then you got one that seems completely weak. One that sits on a throne, one that came riding in on a donkey earlier in that week. But I wonder, which one of those two kings was most afraid of the whole situation? Pilate, who was constantly looking for the approval of the people, or Jesus, who could see the whole picture? Pilate thought he was interrogating Jesus. Jesus, on the other hand, was exposing Pilate's misunderstanding of what real power is about. Pilate looked strong, he looked confident, but I would say that Pilate was afraid. He was afraid of the people, he was afraid of Caesar, he was afraid of losing power, he was afraid of Jesus. Jesus wasn't afraid. Jesus made a choice. He went to a cross for you. And even when the soldiers were mocking him and put a crown of thorns on his head, this was a complete joke. This was a complete fake coronation. God was showing the truth. This is the type of king Jesus is. Not someone who's distant from our pain, but instead wore our pain. Not one who demands comfort, but instead embraces suffering for us. Not one who's there to protect himself, but a king who gave of himself. Earthly kings demand crowns of gold. Jesus wore the curse of a broken world. And that shows us all we need to know about his reign over us. Go back to the beginning when I talked about movies, that 14 of you actually watch movies. But we were talking about Biff, and we were talking about those kind of movies where there's somebody in control. And when that bully loses control, the power kind of shifts over too. And so when people see someone who's lost power, they go to the other side because they're looking for security, they're looking for freedom, they're looking for winning. Well, as you heard the story, don't let appearances fool you. Jesus isn't losing control of his throne. He is making a choice out of love for you to go to a cross. Because he sees the entire picture. He knows that he's going to come back to life from that grave. He knows that he is going to be right now reigning, not just in our hearts, but he's reigning over all eternity for us. Out of love. There's no manure truck moment for Jesus. No need to switch allegiance to something else. No other stronger power waiting to take over, because there is nothing more powerful than your king. Because this kingdom isn't built on fear. It's built on the truth. It's not built on taking from us. It's built on giving to us. It's not power that's going to fade, but it's in love that lasts forever. So which king do you follow? May there be no king in your heart but the true king, a king like no other. Amen.